Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fareeha from Intake 4th, roll number 50. Today, my topic of presentation is environmentalism in post-colonial term. Environmentalism refers to the idea of caring for and protecting nature, including land, forest, river, animal, plant, and ecosystem. It emphasizes that human beings are deeply connected to the natural world and cannot live separately from it. It Post-colonial studies environmentalism examine how colonial history affected nature and local environments. It damage studies how post-colonial power damage ecosystems, how indigenous communities traditionally live in close harmony with the land, and how modern development continue to control environmental problems. For many centuries, Western thought followed the idea of Anthropocene, which means human-centered thinking. According to their belief, humans were considered the most important being, and nature was viewed mainly as something created for human use. Science was expected to study nature, while the humanities focused only on human society and culture. However, during the late 20th century, scholars began to challenge this way of thinking. They argued that nature should not be treated as a simple background for human activity. Instead, the nature will actively shape human life. Environment thinkers therefore emphasize the importance of more than human world, which include animal, plants, river, forest, landscape. Humans and this more than human world are deeply interconnected, and damage to natural eventually harm human to societies as well. One of the most important ideas in post-colonial environmental studies comes from the historian Alfred W. Crosby in his book Ecological Imperialism. Crosby explained that European colonization did not only change political and cultural system, it also transformed the natural environments of colonized land. When Europeans settled in places such as America, Africa, and Pacific, they introduced new plants, animals, and farming methods. These changes disrupt local ecosystem, destroy native species, clear forests, and replace traditional agriculture with plantational farming focused on cash crops. A major difference between European and indigenous community also shaped these environmental changes. Europeans generally believed that land was form of private property and individual could own, buy, and sell it. In contrast, many indigenous cultures view land as sacred and communal. For them, land was not only a resource but an essential part of their identity, cultural, and spiritual life. Indigenous people believed that humans belong to the land rather than owning it. Before colonization, many indigenous societies maintained a relatively balanced relationship with their environments. Their farming practices were often sustainable, and their religion and cultural tradition emphasized respect for animal, forest, and natural landscape. However, colonial expansion disrupted this balance. Forests were cleared for plantation, natural resources were extracted for global markets, and indigenous communities were pushed off their own land. Another historian, Richard Grove, provides an interesting perspective on the development of environmental awareness. He argued that by the 19th century, Europeans had already caused significant environmental damage within Europe itself through industrialization and overuse of land. When European settlers encountered the relatively untouched environment of their colonies, they began to realize the extent of the damage they had caused at home. Their realization contributed to the emergence of conservation movements and the establishment of national parks and environmental protection law in place like the United States and New Zealand. Environmentalism is also closely connected to the political activism. One example is Ken Saro-Wiwa, a Nigerian activist who protested against oil exploitation and environmental damage in the Niger Delta. He fought for the right of local communities whose land and waters were polluted by oil companies. Another example is Arundhati Roy, who strongly criticized large development projects such as the Narmada Dam project in India. Roy argues that such projects often displace poor people and destroy natural ecosystem in the name of development. Post-colonial scholars also criticize what they see as the hypocrisy of Western environmentalism. Many Western countries achieved their economic development by heavily exploiting natural resources both at home and in their colonies. After benefiting from the exploitation, they now promote strict environmental policies at the global level and encourage developing countries to limit industry growth. For many post-colonial nations, this appears unfair because they feel they are being asked to protect the environment without receiving the same economic opportunities that developed nations. In many ways, the history of environmentalism in post-colonial context reveals a deep irony. Many indigenous societies had long practiced sustainable way of living that respected ecological balance and preserved natural resources. Today, environmental scholars and activists are discovering ecological principles that indigenous culture had understood for centuries. This situation highlights the importance of learning from indigenous knowledge and creating new environmental approach that respect